Quorum's been established. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The Green Valley Special Utility District Board of Directors for May 25th, 2023. Would you all please bow your heads with me for the invocation? Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion. Allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make decisions that affect your people. And continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth and the greater glory of you, and for the service of Green Valley Special Utility District. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Item C, move to public comment. GVSUD welcomes public participation. If you're unable to attend the meeting, a written comment can be emailed or delivered to GVSUD's Public Information Officer with your name and the topic or agenda item you wish to address. To Tracy Rappin. Written comments must be submitted and received no later than 3 p.m. on May 24th, 2023. Please remember the public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Time may not be shared or ceded to another citizen. We have one person, rather respectful individual that I'm happy to introduce, Mr. David Strauss. Please join us. He needs a microphone. Yeah.
James. Thank you very much, Mr. President and board. I noticed that we have all the usual suspects and out here also. Congratulations to the ratepayers for having finally a facility that will carry Green Valley well into the future. I think I represent the noise you hear from this podium, no matter what it is democracy in action. And I think the one group that's underrepresented are the ones that are silent. You have a lot of support from the silent majority, large majority, for the work you do. It's hard to keep that in mind a lot of times, but the looking into the future, just something that yesterday I noticed, and I live in Guadalupe County, which in a New Braunfels address, but I'm a corporate citizen of Cibolo, and have enjoyed the transition of that government in their building and construction departments, including the city manager, including the planning director, a lot of the city staff that I've worked with, and I've watched that morph into positive movements. And I don't say that to say that it was painful before, but to say that this whole area is in transition. And one thing that I noticed yesterday, and I thought it was a little ironic, that the day before this building opens to serve the ratepayers in the future, I go by Cibolo's City Hall, and they're adding a double wide trailer in the parking lot. And it's because of the growth. And I think that all that means to me is they're going to be needing a new facility also. And to the extent that this board can help them in that transition. And it's never fun to spend a lot of money on something, but because ratepayers rightfully say, do we really have to do that? Do we have to do that? I think that when they built their new city hall, it was well thought out, unfortunately, because of the dynamic growth. And all that to say that I think that Green Valley has done, and of course I'm patting myself on the back a little bit because I was involved, has done a great job of positioning the working tool, which is what this building is, for the employees and for the ratepayers into the future. But I congratulate you for your work and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strauss. One of the constant comments that the board makes to each other is we are no longer a small organization. And I think this building is physical proof of the growth that we've had and we experience and the increase in our population. So thank you again for your comments. Is there anybody else that may have been missed? All right, let's move on to item D, the consent agenda. All items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the board and will be approved by one motion. There will be no discussion of these items unless a board member so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered and action taken as necessary as part of the order of business. Approval of the final of the items below: board meeting minutes from April 27th, financial report until audited of April 30th, cash investment report April 30th, the balance sheet from April 30th, and the check detail from April 30th. Do I have a motion to approve this consent agenda?
I'd like to pull items D2 and D5, and I'll be brief.
And I'll make a motion to approve D1, 3, and 4.
I have a motion to approve 1, 3, and 4. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Sherman,
Yes, sir.
D2 and D5.
On item D2, so my comments again are on our running totals. We have an agenda item later, Pat, that I expect we're going to have some explanations of those higher percentage items that are somewhat over budget. So I'm going to kind of defer to there, but I want to make my comments on that. And then on D5, I would like to thank staff, whoever's doing it. I'm looking for Pam. I assume it's her that is put the invoice descriptions in. This is what I'm looking for. And I can work with staff outside of the meeting to get answers on anything I have there. So I appreciate we get the description back on the board check register. And that's all the comments I have on that one.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. I'll accept a motion to approve items D2 and D5.
Make a motion to approve D2 and D5.
A second?
Seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda is complete. Item E, Green Valley SUD General Manager, Staff, Engineers, and Board Committee Chairs. There'll be no discussion of these items unless a board member so requests it as part of the order of business. Review the following memos, reports, and updates and take action as necessary. Start with item 1. Here, the General Manager updates. Mr. Allen?
Thank you, sir. To start off with the item, I want to thank the board for allowing us, my staff, which was, we call the trailer people, that was in the portable trailer, move in. And when we did, because when we did that, it gave us opportunity not only to continue working. However, it also helped us fine tune the checklists, the punch lists, and the other things that we found that items were not on that checklist that we've had the contractor address and repaired. Also gave our IT person time to get the bugs out of the systems, and he's been very busy, both next door to us at the old building as well as this one. And so first off, I just want to thank y'all for allowing us to do that once we reached substantial completion. The district is busy. We continue working with development. So I will say the development community has changed a little bit. They're a little more careful with their decisions when they're asking for service, and we're having to revise many of the meetings that we've had with them in the past. They've changed some of their plan designs and stuff, but we're working through those, and it's nothing drastic that affects the district. It just affects their portion they're doing on their side or what they're having to do to change their plans for their development. We continue working on those things. The crews are working steadily every day, just like they have been. The rain has been something to deal with, but we're used to those things. That's what we do. So everything's running fine. The first one on my list there, the rate analysis and study update.
Pat, I'm going to interrupt you.
Sure.
So I had a call with Pat after our big rain event, and that was the first, would you describe it as a large rain event since our certainly since our trunk main has gone live in reference to wastewater,
That is correct.
everything went well. We didn't have any outflows. We didn't have any permit excursions at the plant. Based on Pat and I's discussion, we didn't have a large increase in flow, which tells me that the system is not leaking. It's tested well, it's installed well. So I wanted to recognize that, based on a 3-inch rain event is significant for a wastewater provider. And Pat, we seem to have done well. There's nothing beyond what I've said that we need to know about.
No, everything ran fine. We anticipated something. When you have something, a new toy, you anticipate things that's what's going to happen to that. So Claire and RJ at our plant were prepared. The construction crews did a good job on our design. There were a few manholes that we were concerned about. We monitored that trunk line, those manholes, and we didn't see anything that we need to be concerned with at this point in time. We didn't have we had a slight increase of flow at the plant, but nothing that could not be managed, and is very, very minimal effect at this point. And prior to the storm, and months before we had the rains, we've looked at the condition and the locations of our manholes, and we know which ones that we need to be concerned about. Fortunately for us, we've been in this area for a long time with our water lines, so we know where the danger or the tough spots are in our service area. Of course, as subdivisions are built, those things change because flows change, drainage flows change. But we monitor those. We got a good crew online that monitors that during events. And so we were prepared, but we didn't see anything. So we're very happy with that at this point.
Right, and I had a conversation with Pat. I believe I talked to Mr. Cooper about it, but I wanted to recognize that the first stressful rain period, everything went well. So I wanted to recognize that.
Awesome.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
On to the next item, the rate analysis study update. I was hoping I'd have that ready for y'all today, but it's not finished. I didn't want to bring y'all a product that wasn't complete. After Pam and mine review, we've had our third review on this, and each time we do, we change the numbers, reevaluate some things, and projections for next year as well in this budget, in this rate review. And so there just wasn't enough time to get that information to the consultant and that consultant do their work and get it back to us to where we have time to review it before we present it to y'all. So my plan is to have that to you in the next board meeting in June, which will work well with our process of our beginning and preparation of next year's fiscal year budget.
Thank you for expressing that. And I look forward to the finance committee's report because that rate analysis will be in direct relationship to the next year's budget.
Correct.
Correct.
And
Thank you.
how many drafts did you say we have?
Drafts, I don't really have a draft. We just have a
I mean,
working,
the working, whatever, how many
probably
versions?
this, we're in our third one, Pam. I believe our third one. But we're not even considering official drafts. We're just looking at categories and rethinking and massaging those. So I don't have a finished product yet. I don't have a summation of the drafts, I guess is what best way to say it.
So I know I was planning to address the rate analysis this year or this month.
Right.
It helps me decide whether, for example, we need to buy 2 new trucks. If we have a no rate increase next year, a large rate increase next year, that will help me decide how much money to spend. So please make sure we have it next month.
Understand. Yes, sir. The next item is amended financial budget. If you'll look in your board packet under E2. This one. Pam and I worked on this budget. Let me find mine right quick. And I had Pam kind of color coded so it'd be easier for y'all to see what we did. And the colors is yellow, and then there's another color more of an orange colored. What that represents, the yellow is where we added, and the orange color is where we took money from that and applied to a different category. And this is money that we found in different line items that we moved around within our budget. We didn't create. The only place that we created additional revenue would have been on our, let me find that line item. on your spreadsheet, it'd be the third page of that spreadsheet. Number 89, interest expense, long-term debt. There was some interest that we did not have included at the time we prepared this budget. So we did add money to that category for the long-term interest. That's on the bond issuance and our loan payments that we didn't have calculated in there. That's the only location that we added money to. The revenues I did not touch. And I know, Nick, you had concerns about line item number 13-40080, which is a water interest income. Well, the reason being that we've placed that money in areas where we can gain more interest. So that's a revenue, that's an income, so that's not a bad thing. But I didn't touch any of those things. I didn't predict additional. I'm letting it ride out for the fiscal year. We'll see how those interest rates hold. Of course, they could change next year, 2 years from now. We won't have that type of increase, but.
Right, and that 400,080, that water interest income, you know, we're at 1,000% of what we budgeted, which is a good thing.
Right.
But I think we could probably be a little bit closer to budgeting, you know, 10 times short in our budget is.
You know, we don't control that interest rate, and until we know what that interest rate's gonna be, it's kind of hard to know where that's gonna flop. And when we approved this budget, the interest rates were much lower, and all of a sudden they shot up. So it's, thankfully, it's a
No, it's a
positive
good
thing
thing.
for us.
I think we've also borrowed more money since this was applied, or maybe the money came in, or maybe some reimbursements. I don't know. But that's a, you know, the largest discrepancy on this item. What about the capital items? We don't have any update on,
We're not reporting on a capital budget in. We're gonna bring that back to you next month. I'll explain to the committee. We're revising how that's presented to y'all to where it's more clear on where that money is or how it's spent and how those projects throughout the year change that budget. You gotta remember the capital budget. Some of those items on that capital budget are given. Some of those are predictions on jobs that we may do and we may not do. So to better explain that to you, to understand why we do it that way, I'm going to present it separately with a different report to y'all, more explanation and more transparency on that for next month.
because
Mr. Allen, too, if I may step back a little bit. Nick, you expressed interest in the interest income. We did discuss that in the finance committee meeting. I realize I'm a little bit ahead because we're not to that agenda item, but we discussed, well, should we do something with that? And what was given to us was the fact that that interest is off of capital loans. And as that capital money is spent, that interest income is going to go down. So this is a 1-year snapshot. We're not going to have that much interest income in the following years.
right, and I guess my point would be if we're planning to borrow capital
Well,
money,
it's already borrowed.
correct, but it went into the bank this budget year, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if we're
Not-
planning to
Not
to
precisely in the
borrow-
bank. You could speak to where it was put.
The bank, the bank, just, we'll call it the bank.
Yeah.
Where the interest is created. So if we're planning to borrow money, have that discussion with us during the budgeting period, so we know, hey, we're planning to borrow $10 million, $50 million, whatever it is. So that we know that it's gonna go in a bank and we can put interest on it to help with the budget. And it also helps me at least understand how much money we're planning to borrow in the future.
Well, we have to remember too, that that money borrowed that's bringing this interest is borrowed against capital projects. So it can, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Allen, I think that money can only be spent on capital projects.
Yeah, there's specific projects that money that when we sold a bond issuance, that money is spent for those specific items. But there again, we don't base our capital improvements or the bond issuances off what we think the interest rate's gonna be, or what potential interest we could gain off of that money in our accounts. We don't determine, let me say, I don't think that's a factor when we think about, do we need to sell bonds at this amount? It'll bring us this much interest.
We can't make money off of interest. The arbitrage rules come in, we
That's
can't.
correct. And so,
We can't make more interest than we pay in, we can't make more interest in revenue than we pay in interest to.
and we work very closely with our arbitrage consultants on that. In fact, just Most recently, we just got their final report, or they're working on one of the reports now. We just got, I believe that was last week, Pam, we got that report from Arbitrage Consultants. And at this point, we're fine. They say we're within the obligations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Real quick, I have another question. On the yellow and orange changes, the adds and subtractions, was that a wash or was there a positive and negative out of the whole thing?
What we did, we just looked at the numbers where we looked like we were a little higher in some of the interest rates, and we
Mhm.
determined, do we expect change in that, or are we gonna probably run pretty steady with our certain line items? We can determine, well, we have enough in that line item, we don't need to change that one, so we left those
Right.
alone. On the ones where we changed, we could expect some change in those.
So, cause just the math that, I kind of did was 200 and almost 10,000 was the positive, and then, we took out, 175-ish, somewhere around there. So there's a difference. It's not an equal, change of funds and where it's a simple wash. I just want to make sure that that's what we're all understanding.
Yes, in other words, we didn't look at to see if it was a wash or not.
Okay.
We saw that we felt like maybe let's just take, what's a good one? Plant maintenance.
So we
Right
added
now, we're-
25,000 to that line
Right.
item.
We took out 28,000 and applied it somewhere else in this budget.
Right.
And so because of that's on the wastewater side, because of the trends we've seen up to now, we feel that we can still make it at that number there. Of course, there again, it's a new sewer plant and we're not expecting a lot of maintenance, but there could be something, any of the line items in this budget, there could always be that surprise.
Okay.
But the numbers that we feel is based off the trends that we're seeing, and we just move the monies around instead of trying to add to our revenues to create a higher revenue stream to satisfy the budget. We just move numbers within the budget. Move money around in our budget is all we did.
Right. So we're still, with the changes, we just increased our budget 35,000 across the board. Is the change just for on these pages right here? Ballpark.
Yes.
And then there's
That's
one,
remarkable.
there's one line item that is highlighted in yellow, and I just want to verify, it might not need to be highlighted. The 600,304 professional services, that looks like the original budget of,
There was no change on
yeah,
that.
750,000 stayed, 750,000. Was that just an,
Yeah, we should have
Highlighting.
highlighted those. That's a mistake. We didn't make any changes to either one of those.
I just wanted to verify that there were no changes, not that we didn't insert that in there somehow.
Actually, that's not correct. We did make a change to the contracted services.
Yeah, contracted was
We
added.
we added 20,000 to that one.
And that's 600,303, and then 600,304, the professional service.
Yeah, that one is no
That-
change.
That cell
That
G
one's,
73 is blank, so that whole line just doesn't need to be highlighted.
That's correct.
And that's no big deal. I just want to make sure, I'd much rather that be the case than, oops, we left out in addition to the professional services.
Mr. Allen, I noticed that we had an increase in overtime. Is that due to understaffing, or is that just due to the water emergency?
It's not due to understaffing, it's due to just what we're dealing with. Trying to budget for overtime is always a trick. It's always a tough. And this year, used to that number was just kind of blended into our hourly wages. This year, we've created a separate line item so we could track it closer. Now, Pam and I and Tracy look at the overtime reports quite often. And when we see the crews out working after hours or on weekends, whenever, we start questioning that. Did we need all four of them? Did we need 6 guys out there? Did we need 2? What was the case? What's going on? We track that with the supervisors and the managers of those departments. But when you have sometimes 8 or a 12-inch leak or even a 16, you need more personnel there for nothing or other reason, for safety. And so we track those, but moving from wet to dry conditions, you're going to have a tick up of your maintenance on the infrastructure out in the fields. Once it starts drying up, it's going to go back the other way. We have very expansive soil in our service area. And so we have You can actually track that on the wet and dry seasons. As we're moving into summer, we're gonna have a little more activity after hours and on weekends. And so knowing that and seeing that in the last many years, we've decided to add that up, add a little bit more to that category.
But you're confident you're fully staffed right now.
We could use a few more, but that's not why I added to that number there. It's because of the activity after hours and on weekends. And that overtime pretty much is directed straight to the outside crews. The internal, the office staff may have a handful of overtime, but it's very minimal. Most of that is the field crews, water and wastewater.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. President, just a note, I'm getting ahead of the game. Finance Committee did examine and discuss the overtime issue extensively. And we were satisfied with, okay, you just forecast overtime.
Sure.
It is what it is.
Mr. Cooper, is this something the board needs to approve?
No, sir, it's a report.
The report.
But if we're making a change,
If we're making a change, but
but that's
Yes.
the thing, I think
If we're reallocating,
we're
making a change.
reallocating money over, we do need to vote on that.
Yeah, I think we would need an approval because we are making change to the original budget.
Well, and I would like to see the capital that is part of our, part
So
of our.
I think what we could do is we could approve this section right
I
here,
think we
and
can do it all
then,
at once.
but next month, he's going to give us a detailed breakout of just that section of the budget that we're gonna be amending at that point. Cause he does need to
I
add the
think this
vehicles
is-
and all that too
These
into
four
it.
sheets that are in our packet every month as our budget include page 4, the capital. So in this amended budget, we have
3 out of the
3/4
4.
of our budget report. So if we're gonna amend the budget, I would like to see it done all at once.
well, we can't just blanket amend the budget. We have to understand what the dollar amounts are that are being amended. So can anybody express exactly what we need to approve?
If you want to wait till next month till you hear the capital report, that's fine. There's nothing that's stopping us from operating, whether you approve this today or not. It's an amendment to their budget. It either gets approved or doesn't. So if you want to hold off on approval of this until you hear the capital, you do it all at one time, that's fine.
That would be my preference
I'm,
because
I'm
we're,
okay with
we
that
need
as long
to
as
do
we
the
all,
yeah.
Yeah.
If we're gonna modify the report as a whole, we can't have a missing page of it.
But you need to consider that there are two separate budgets. There's a capital budget and this is annual budget.
And so.
Now, they do overlap. I'll give you that. In some areas, they do slightly overlap. But yeah, they're two separate budgets. Like I will frankly tell you that this budget, the committee unanimously recommends approval. Now, whether that gets voted on this month or next month, doesn't matter to us.
well, my only comment to that is we're supposed to keep these budgets in check as we go. And I'm not saying we get to do it every month
Or monitored.
or monitor. to
Yeah,
an extent, right?
monitored's a better word.
But we need to start making progress on this, and that's why, like you said, there's two different budgets.
Right.
And capital improvements, one thing, this is another thing. I want to start getting things, into this as far as changes. And as this stands for these 3 pages for that one section of the budget, I want to get this to where it's done, and now Pat has to adhere to that part. Next month when we
What I'm
do the
saying is
capital.
We don't have all of the information necessary to be able to make that approval today.
For this section, yes, we're good. It's just for the capital side of the budget, or that's what he's gonna present in more detail next month. So,
So nothing to decide today.
I mean,
There's no action.
No action.
no action then.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think, finances, James, speak up if you feel he must. I think the finance committee is on board to put it till next month. We can look at both.
All right, so,
Could I? make
James and his
comment,
committee
Mr.
are working diligently on this information. Great work, guys. So
W-
Thank you.
Could I make a comment, please?
Mhm.
If you remember when we approved our current budget, remember the workshops and stuff we had, we had headed down the road of having our general revenues budget. And then we were gonna have a capital budget separate that we'd approve months later or something like that. And I think the board at first, we were open to that idea. And then we decided, we really don't have a large enough capital improvement budget. I think that warrants having two separate budget periods throughout a year, which would have caused a lot more meetings, a lot more other things. So we kind of decided, let's not do that. If you remember last September, when you approved this budget, we kind of put aside what we had agreed to months earlier, like I'm talking about May, I believe, on a capital budget that we presented, which had a bunch of other things in there, vehicles and all those kind of things. We decided not to do that, came back in September and decided, let's do this together. We're approving both budgets at the same time. And that's when we made the choice of zeroing out some of those line items like vehicles and other things. So if y'all needed vehicles, come back to y'all and we can make those decisions. So that's what we approved in September.
And you're leaving out a key note that we were, as a board, we're supposed to get a listing of the capital needs.
I agree, and that's correct. That's one
And-
reason
and
why I
that's-
decided
oh,
not
no,
to
but
do
We
that.
also talked about that last month, though, that we were gonna get it this month, if I recall correctly.
That is true.
So when I saw the blank page, I figured, okay, you're still working on it, you know. we'll
But
get
I
to
felt
that
that-
part.
That we needed more preparation for that capital presentation for y'all. So
I would
you're gonna
agree.
have
I
other
don't know that-
questions about
I
it.
don't know that last month's capital presentation went terribly smoothly. So I agree, we need to be prepared. But if in the capital budget during budgeting time, and so here in a couple months, when we start doing budgeting time, we're not gonna just skip the capital. We need to know what do you need next year? You need 2 trailers, you need 4 trucks, you need a mower. You know, we need the full rundown of what we need.
And that's what we've discussed in the committee and that's our plan. Yeah, we understand that.
We're still expecting that for this fiscal year. And not yet. We haven't got it.
Well, at this fiscal year, we approved it back in September. We didn't have that list for you. And that's why I think we decided not to put money in that line item. If we needed equipment or something came up, then we brought it back to the board. That's what we've been doing. And it's a little harder that way, but that's why,
Well,
but this next
Based
fiscal
on what
year,
Andrew presented, I mean,
this
think
next
it's
fiscal year,
time
we'll
to
have
say, yeah.
changes made and that's our goal. That's our plan. And we started talking about that in the committee day before yesterday. And that's what we'll be putting together for y'all. However, I also explained to them some of the reasons why I'm not prepared today for that capital budget. So I'll have it to you next month with more description of what we have done so far and the reasons why.
So rate study and capital.
budget.
capital
That's
budget
correct.
items for
well,
next
no,
month.
the whole budget would be
Yeah, but
voted
act on
on.
the capital budget items for next. month.
Correct, but that will be its own voting line item that we would have to deal with separately.
John, let me make sure I'm understanding. What you're advocating is, and I think I agree with you, a separate vote on annual budget and a separate vote on capital budget. Is that
I'm
correct?
okay with combined. I just want for next
Need the
meeting,
information.
though, an actual line item specifically for
Sure.
budget
Oh, yeah.
amendment
We need
vote.
line item capital budget.
Right,
absolutely.
on the agenda, not in the operations report
no,
or
no.
general manager
no, no.
report.
All right, good. Thank you. Any other comments? All right, item 3, status memo for policies and procedures.
I have a question real quick. So last week I got with Sam and I was able to get the whole list of all these attachments via email. Thank you, Sam, for that. Does the rest of the board have it? As far as all these policies and procedures based on this sheet, do y'all have a copy of these or no?
I do not
most of
believe
them.
they've
I'm
been
not sure about
provided.
them all.
Not every single one of them, no.
Okay, Pat, is that something that we can have Sam just forward to them so they can have for record?
I was looking for my memo. Can you repeat what you just said, please?
So, the
The status memo, yes, I have
Right.
that.
So Sam sent out those via email to me when I requested them. Can she also forward that to all the board members as well, so they have their own version?
We'll
So
get
they
that
can-
to him, yes.
Okay,
Matt and Sam are working on that and we'll continue on that. And what you don't have yet is the operating policy and we'll get that to everyone as well before next board meeting.
now I did have a question when it came to the time frame of getting some of these ones that you have under revision updated. I know it says December of this year. Is there any way that we can get that October-ish or anytime sooner than December?
Which policy is that?
The operating and personnel employee manual policy?
Yes.
Okay,
We'll
so,
have that, a version of that to you by the next board meeting.
Awesome. Okay, so a rough
Now,
draft.
The revisions of that, probably not. We wanted to show you what we have and what we're working on. This is a list of the, we feel that all of these things need to be reviewed.
Mhm.
Now, it's going to take a while to review all of these things, but I think first of all, foremost, the operating policy, the investment policy is in pretty good shape. With our investment committee, we went over those things. We look at that quite often. Personnel policy and employment manual, we're working on that with our employment attorney. We have some adjustments yet to make to that before we present that to you. I think, Mr. Freeze, you asked for all of these, all the policies that we have
In place right now.
in place right now, and that's what we're providing to you. But I think you're gonna see, and our recommendation is that whether we go through committee or you allow staff and I make adjustments or corrections to that after it's been vetted from the employment attorney, then it presented to either committee or the board for approval. The drought contingency plan and water rights inventory, we're working on that already. In fact, I think Mr. Sherman had some comments on that one from
And I've
last
been
December.
coordinating with Philip on that. I
Okay.
owe that to you. He got me which board packet I need to go pull so I can get you those comments.
The succession plan needs to be revised. Human Resource Committee charter was created a few years ago. Whether that needs to be changed or not, that's up to this board.
President, may I make a comment on that?
Sir.
Yeah, that HR committee was created to assist, and
The hiring of the AGM.
AGMs, yeah, and it's, I think we discussed this some months ago. Is there even a need for that to exist anymore? And I
That's a
know that-
great point, Mr. Robertson. I don't think it is, but it's a requirement of our bylaws that we establish an HR committee.
Right.
So
we-
even though there isn't a need, we need to make
think-
sure it's.
I think the executive committee was handling the HR committee stuff, which
Yeah.
when we slimmed down the amount of committees out there, I think that
I
one rolled
I
into
need to
that
study the
level.
bylaws, but if it's listed in the bylaws that we're required to have an HR committee, then we need to have an established committee.
Yeah,
So-
and then we may look at this changing the bylaws to,
Bylaws,
okay,
correct.
just dissolve that committee.
That's another minor topic for Mr. Sherman's committee is.
Would it be helpful if we take this memo, which lists our current policies, we get our current policies to the board members? But then my staff and I get together with the executive committee and kind of tell you what our plan is for these and see what y'all think about that. Then we bring that to the board. These items need to be addressed.
Well, at least going on a priority list of importance and then kind of drilling down
That's
to.
what I'm talking about.
I would feel comfortable having an understanding of where we're at in the process. If it's complete, then we need to put that it's complete. If it's under revision, if it's in legal review. So this list is very, very helpful, but it doesn't tell me what the status of that policy is. So that we can,
That's what he's asking though, is for
That's
the
what I'm
executive
saying.
committee to go over what is priority that, even though they're working on some, does a priority need to change for the needs as of right now?
On the memo, you'll see that we have policies currently under review.
Yeah.
These are ones that I was working on with my staff already, which is the personnel policy, employee manual, and the operating policy. Those are large policies and hit us directly every day. And so we started with those. And that's kind of what I was talking about. If we get these current policies to everybody so they can see what we have, and then I come back to you, maybe the executive committee with a flow chart or plan for how we chip away at this list to get those accomplished.
that sounds fair to me.
This amount of
Yeah.
policies will take some time to go through all those policies.
Absolutely.
And then
absolutely.
vetted with the employment attorney where needed, or our other attorney with Shan, if it has to do with water law and all those things. So it's quite a task, but it's necessary. It needs to be done.
But we're here to support you in this also.
Okay.
So whatever we can do to assist you in this process, we're happy to do.
Then allow me to put a plan together more than just a memo. We'll get the documentations of all the board members, and then I'll come up with a plan on how we proceed through that, and y'all can direct me in one way or the other.
Right, and if we do on your, monthly meetings that we have here, can this be a norm for updates as to your report?
Status.
As far as where we're at, like a chart wise of it's under review, phase one review, legal review,
Status
then
report.
approval. Kind of just like GAT chart that shows when we can expect these things to be finalized and behind us. So,
If you'll let me
Yeah.
hire more personnel, we can do that. No, I'm kidding.
I
I don't
believe,
mean that.
the gentleman back there,
We
the
can-
nice
we-
white
we
shirt
can make
is,
that work.
the key guy right there, so.
I think I heard Mr. Hendricks grunt just now.
And Mr. Cooper, actually, James, I have a question for you. How are you coming on the credit card policy?
It'll be presented, Mr. Robertson will be presenting it.
Part of his committee report today.
Oh,
Yeah.
today? Excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll wait for
Thank you.
comment there.
All right, any other questions, policies, procedures? All right, let's move on to item 2, operations report. Ms. Pam?
The
Somebody
one thing
tracking how many more microphones we need for in here?
Yeah, we,
That, I mean, that's a legitimate question. We probably need about half dozen more microphones.
the only thing I do want to report on is that the Edwards Aquifer is going up, and I have not informed Pat yet, but they have gone back to stage 2 as far as restrictions. So as long as we keep getting rain, that'll be a good thing for us as far as on that side of the system. Otherwise, does anybody have any questions?
I have a question, I believe aimed at Gary on the water availability.
Okay, that's definitely Gary.
So Gary, on this listing, I was trying to judge these future water items. So all of these are contracted. So this volume of water is contracted, outside of any additional water that we need to acquire. And then as far as when the years that the volume ticks up, those are still accurate when you go
Well,
over this?
so those are all just estimates at this point. So it's contracted water, but some of it is not constructed. So those jumps and those line items is some infrastructure has to be built to deliver that water. So your next round of water will be ARWA Phase 1 that will come into Lake Dunlap. So that will bring in a new source. It's a little over 1,500 acre feet of water, but
And that's the project that's underway now.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
And that's
I had that
what-
one, I had that one down for delivery probably in 24.
In 24.
Because it's under construction now. And then the blue band of GBRA Lake Dunlap water, that will be a future.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's construction needed for that one, and we've been talking about that. Canyon Regional has been working on their Wales Ranch Phase 3. And then there's a Dunlap expansion that's needed to secure that or treat that GBRA water out of the river, surface water. We've been looking at that, and Pat and I have been talking about it a lot about what is that next project and what's the cheapest water to develop to bring in that next source. But you have water rights, you just don't have the treatment capacity to bring them
Okay.
in, and you don't have the demand for it at this.
I just wanted to make sure I knew what our existing was.
Right.
For when we get to the CRWA report. And can you briefly tell me what the River Mills Lake Dunlap is? I'm not
Sure.
familiar with that. It's
So-
a very small volume, but I don't recall talking about that lately.
It was probably, I don't know, 7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. The River Mill and New Braunfels had water rights. They contacted Canyon Regional and wanted to sell their rights. Canyon Regional reached out to all of the member entities, and I believe I forget the other, there was 3 entities that stepped up. Green Valley was one, Marion bought some, Cibolo did. There was 3 entities from Canyon Regional that bought that, but it's a very small amount of water, but it would all come through Lake Dunlap.
And on future reports, I'm gonna ask for one small adjustment. Under your table down here at the bottom, can you just give a volume in acre feet that
Sure.
each of those?
Yeah,
equate
there's
to?
actually another chart that goes with that table that would give you all those
Okay.
acre feet. So we can print that also.
Again, I appreciate this chart. I use it every board meeting. So I thank you for putting it in there. And if you can just add that one page or just add it to the bottom, however's easiest.
Okay.
That would help me.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Ms. Pam, appreciate the report. Moving on to board committee reports. Let's start with the facilities committee. Ms. Miller?
So the memo that you have updated you on what happened previous. Yesterday, we had a walkthrough. It was, I think it's our final walkthrough. We found a few issues that were new. We found 4 ceiling tiles that have leaks. They're not sure if they're roof leaks or if they're the AC condensation. So the contractor's going to look into that. There was a few things that we found that they're going to redo or they did yesterday when we walked through the tour. They should be done by May 28th. So then they should be done with everything and then everything else will be warranty. So it was a great tour yesterday.
So during our meeting as well, we talked about the transition of employees coming into this side of the building, when things are gonna happen. I know we have the customer service representatives coming over June
Fifth,
1st or 2nd?
fifth,
Now it's
I
5th?
think it's,
Is it 5th or 1st, Pat?
Pat.
Yes.
Was it the first or the fifth? Customer service is coming over.
I am paying attention.
That's the
kinda.
first. Yeah, thank you, David. The first, first and second, I think were the 2 days that we were gonna have. So I know, we're working on putting the memo out to the public. It's supposed to be going out this week, correct? By
Yeah,
the end of
what
this
our
week?
plan is, close the office, June 1st is a Thursday, close at noon and start our move, customer service, the half a day on Thursday and full day on Friday. So Monday morning, we're set up here and ready to go. David's been making sure the receipt printers are working. That's also the time we'll move the server over, which is critical, and get all that done. And so that's our plan, is that day and a half to get the customer service and billing moved over here, which will pretty much will fill the rest of this building. After we get them running and set up, because we're using our field crews, our meter reading crews, and everybody that works outside as the laborers to get everybody moved. And then once we get them set up and running, everything's good, then we'll slowly, over a period of time, get the guys moving over their operational side. Now, we'll still be operating out of that building because that's where all our parts and everything are. We weren't going to move all that stuff over to the warehouse until we have our more labeling, where those items are going to go, our map of our warehouse. So which components go where out there. We just don't want to bring them in, pile them up, then figure it out. We want a place for it. So when we bring it over, we set it in place and we're good. So that's kind of our plan. So it's going to take us several months to get that moved over.
I would make a suggestion that we give some additional leeway for if there's any water bill due dates during that period of time when we might be closed and someone comes up here on the last day that their bill is due and can't pay it. Let's give everybody a little bit of a grace period while we're moving, so
Well, I
we
think-
don't get any.
The posting of that notice goes out today, I believe, on our website and Facebook and stuff. But trust me, if a customer drives up and needs to pay a bill, we're going to accept that. We're going to take care of them.
Right, you know what I'm saying though. While
You know-
we're in transition, let's make sure no one feels like they were getting a late fee because of.
No, we would look at that.
My understanding is as they're moving, that window is not gonna be like blinds closed off, point and arrow that way, or is there somebody that's gonna communicate?
They will know we're moving to the new facility and we'll put up signs saying if you need
Okay.
assistance, come next door. But, I guess the type of people we have here, unfortunately, they're always looking, always monitoring. And so if we see a customer drive up over there, we're gonna direct them over here. We'll take care of them. Or we'll take care of them over there in some form or fashion. We'll make it happen.
But there, at this point in time, there's no concern about level of service.
That's, no, not at all. Yeah, not at all. That always comes first. And I'm not saying that to sound good, but it does always come first. However, that's why we picked the 1st through the 5th to move, because that's from the board meeting to about the 5th of the month is a little bit of a lull for the customer service and billing. And some of my staff, we regroup and head forward after the board meeting, but that's why that's the perfect time. That's not the middle of the month. That'd be horrible. It'd be devastating, or even the last end of the month. That's bill time where we send the bills out. So the first 5 days of every month is usually a lull for the customer service people. That's why we chose that.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Miller, any other comments?
No, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Miller?
Inspections, or not inspections, sorry, tours. If people wanna get a tour of the facility, do they need to set an appointment with somebody to, like somebody from the public wants to kind of see the facility?
Well,
How is that gonna be managed?
We still have contractors working.
Mhm.
And so I wouldn't want to do that until we know we're completely finished with that. We've got everybody moved in and set. So they're not walking around through boxes and desks or chairs here or there. We need to
And
get set up.
correct me if I'm wrong, that's scheduled for the grand opening to be able to give full building
That's
access. and
what
tours.
I was anticipating, but
But my thought was, we actually discussed it the other day, not with you, but I mean, somebody else, is staff would have to take time out of their busy working day to give a tour to this person or that person or this person, that person. So that's why we have a grand opening. So then it's monitored. So that way everybody can just walk through, see things, and they're not, I wouldn't say supervised, but pretty much. I mean, it's because that's why these are locked. So people can't go back there on a daily basis. So that's what I think that the grand opening is do, is to for everybody to see everything instead of having the staff
Yes,
one
I
person at a time.
thought we would come back to the facility committee with a plan for the grand opening. But what date, who's invited, I mean, how are we gonna do the invitations and all those things? I assume that's what y'all want from us. And not, but we need to get everybody here and set up things in place. Enough, no other reason, so they see how we operate, but also for the safety of the public coming through up and down the hallways.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure.
But you have
we
to
were at least
remember,
thinking
as we
about that.
move, we're also getting rid of stuff that's 40 and 50 years old, that's been stuck in corners and stuff. And does not to be over here, or can be scanned and gotten rid of. And so we're doing that process as well. I have boxes, if you saw my office right now, stacked everywhere, where we're going through and getting stuff that's no longer necessary and those things. So it's a process. The other thing is, before you have a grand opening, you make sure everything is functional, all the communications throughout the building, because there's a tremendous amount of communication between departments, employees, from the warehouse up to here, to back across the street. All that has to be hitting on all cylinders before you start bringing in the public. And that's our goal. That's going to take us a month or two after we get in here. And don't forget, this is our 60th year of being in business. Do we want to make the grand opening closer to that actual date of anniversary? Or do we just want to celebrate our 60th year and have the grand opening at the same time, or we have separate celebrations? Something to think of.
I would say let's scale back on the quantity of celebrations we have.
Combine it.
Combine them and two birds with one
One
stone.
time, one big one.
So,
That's something for the board to decide and direct us in how you want to do that.
Well, bring that to the facility committee and we'll discuss the grand opening and then we'll go from there.
okay,
And I apologize for not making an announcement at the beginning of the meeting, but the building is not open at today's meeting, because there's still construction, there's still moving going on. So I wanted to apologize for those in attendance that were looking for a building tour. They're not available today. They will be had when Ms. Miller finalizes the grand opening.
And I have a running question for Philip. Just because you don't have a microphone doesn't mean you don't have to answer. So what are we doing with this outstanding change order that is still outstanding?
I'm not sure.
It's
what-
been approved
So a change order has been approved?
by the facility committee. Yes, the last change order was approved by the facility committee a couple days ago.
And there wasn't a cost attached to that. It was,
I don't
not
think so. It
sure
was
which
just the
change order
final-
we're talking
Yeah,
about.
it was the final, Sam is not here. No, she's on vacation.
You're talking about the final change order that also was coupled with the substantial completion?
I have no idea. I've never seen it.
I'm not aware of a change order.
And
There was a listing of about 10 change orders, I
Yeah.
think, and which was the final, but it was mostly just a listing or compilation of all of that. That was approved.
it wasn't a new change order as in design change or anything added. So like, how do you want to explain that, John? Because we got the,
Was there time added to the job?
no,
originally, yes.
originally from the March due date to the May timeframe, that was also included, correct? Right?
Yes,
I'm
because that was
articulating
because
correct?
the groundwater found, so it added 30 days.
Right, so that was, I believe, the only other part.
That was at the beginning of the construction.
Yeah, that was already,
So the final change order that you signed off on, that one, I don't recall,
that had a
that had a
financial
final
It wasn't a
dollar
different-
amount.
No, there was not an addition to anything on that list that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Mr. Sherman?
I'm just confused because we've been getting reports of a running total of costs and changes, and we've gotten change proposals apparently.
So
that
how
does
about
have
this,
itself on
for next month to, I guess, help with, I guess, the understanding of all the financial burden of the buildings projects. I know, I asked y'all for an amortization schedule. And I know we're gonna work on breaking
Yeah, I'd
out
love
those two.
I've never seen that.
the two bonds and zeroing in on this facility only. I know in that presentation, we could probably throw in all the AIAs, the schedule of values, where we're at, and going to the point of the finish line of giving up the retainage and whatnot. But if we can get a presentation next month for that, I think that would help everybody's
So
understanding.
who's got this document
I
right?
did.
Right.
I put it up there. That is the change order that was sent. This should be the final one right here.
James, can you email that to me, please?
It's a
Yeah,
whole, yeah, it's a whole packet, but,
Nick,
yeah,
let
it's
us
not
get
such
that.
a, it's
Yeah.
not a change order. That's the
Contingency.
substantial completion packet that we got that has everything, all the punch list, all the information. So we approved that. So I don't know why it says change order.
It says change.
I know, but
It
it's
is a
because I
change.
have the same thing.
When the contractor changes their dollar amounts. of
All
the
those things listed there were already pre-approved.
They were already
and done at the
pre-approved.
time that they came up
Yeah.
during the last 18
There's,
months.
there's huge number. Is a change. There are financial implications.
Nothing that we had to approve or that cost the board money. It
James,
did
correct.
not change our
Scroll
budget.
up, James.
Yeah, there's nothing that changed.
Please.
Nick,
Where do
Here.
you want it here? I
Yeah,
show
keep
that all,
going, James.
okay, I show all the board members got a copy of it though.
All right, right there.
just
Okay.
give that back to me when you're done, Nick.
So, for example, item 11, 235,000. That's additional cost.
What does it say? Can't see.
Pier
from here.
casings, just groundwater issue.
That was the
200.
original groundwater.
I'm aware of that. And at the time I asked if there was any implication to the budget and I was told no. And there is. So I'll review it. James is going to send this to me. I'll look at it. I'm
But
just not.
next
happy
month
at
we'll
all
have an
with how
agenda.
We've just,
Next month, we'll have an agenda item with all this broken out. Pat's gonna break out the amortization schedule, pretty much everything that deals with the facility in itself.
Okay.
And then we can go into more.
and those are good questions. Those
Yeah.
are things I'm glad.
Well, and I want everybody to have that full understanding of the magnitude and with both bonds being tied to the building, where's the breakout and where is our break even point? At what year do we say that's paid off? So,
This listing is also credits and expenses, additions.
right.
So it's a combination of both.
But if we can also tie in the schedule of values for the board to understand kind of what everything costed. But we'll cover that next month.
Oh,
so.
and then my other question, did we hear from the architect about an electrical load calculation on why we have two generators? Did that come through?
I think.
Philip, can you
the
answer that?
Comment I recall was redundancy,
I don't
but,
believe we requested that from the architect.
but I think the electrical engineer had that somehow in his calculations.
Oh, if if it wasn't formally requested,
But yeah, if
would you
we
mind
can,
getting load calculations? Because two generators are very costly and what we heard last month when I asked was redundancy. So we have a redundant generator, which is redundant to the utility power. So.
Okay, I'll submit that request.
but yeah,
curious
we'll
How we,
throw it next.
and the
month.
size
That's
of the
fine.
generator.
Thank you. All right, appreciate the comments. Any other questions, comments for Ms. Miller? Thank you very much, Ms. Miller. Appreciate your work. Item 2, Finance Audit Committee. Mr. Hendricks has asked Bob Robertson to fill in for him. Or Mr. Hendricks, are you speaking?
No, Bob's good.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. Glad you're here today, though, to fill in anything. Most of the items that we covered, we did meet Tuesday at 11. Brett and myself were in physical attendance. Mr. Hendricks joined us via Teams. And I think, quite frankly, most of the items Pat has already covered because he did an overview of the annual budget with us and has already expressed the balance that we're not really doing a significant increase. We did discuss the item of the $27 million from capital interest-bearing account and some discussion as well, what should we do with that interest? Do we want to have it all there? And then the end, like I had already stated, that, well, that interest income is not going to continue at that level simply because that capital money is going to be used some this year, so that number is going to drop. And so it was decided just to leave it where it is. He had mentioned what he already mentioned here about 25,000 in plant maintenance. And we discussed overtime quite a bit. And it was a matter of, okay, you, like I said, you can't anticipate overtime. All you can do is, okay, this is generally what we had the last few years. If our system is expanded and we're going from dry season to rainy season, things will change. I did bring up the question of vehicles, because I think you had discussed vehicles last year. And we kind of pretty much agreed that well, and this is a discussion for capital budget, so I probably need to stay out of that until the capital budget is brought up, and then we can explain that. I did ask Pam too, because this was another thing that was asked of us in the past, if the vehicles were being tracked in some manner. How many vehicles we had, if maintenance was being tracked and such that the new software package, and I forget the name of it, does include
Fleet management.
does include a fleet management section. And so there is tracking being done, mileage, maintenance, such as that. In
And
fact,
they have a spreadsheet that they are, using accordingly, but that's obviously gonna change come time when we get the NISC system up and running.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's
Necessary for next year.
with my understanding, they're already entered into that system. I could be mistaken, I could have misunderstood her. But the only other thing that we had, and I wasn't sure that this was gonna be brought in, we did approve a credit card policy from the committee, but we were told we didn't realize it needed to go through legal review. That review was accomplished and reported to the committee, yesterday around 4:30. And so,
So next month, we're gonna get the final version to approve as a board and
because it
enact.
does, since the board, I had a discussion with Mr. Allen about that, say, does it need to come up for the board for a vote? He indicated, yeah, it does, and it's not in the packet today, so
It'll be next month.
it'll be next month, yeah.
You have it? Okay. If you can just email it to the board, just so they can look it over and make any
It'll be both.
comments.
Yeah,
So-
because I
It was-
lost my car, I went looking through the.
You said it was emailed to us?
No. I asked if he could
Or
email.
an email.
I
Yeah,
didn't receive it You emailed it yesterday?
We'll get it to everybody.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
just so that everybody can review and,
Good work.
We had a lengthy discussion about this been a couple of months ago, Britt? About how many cards should be issued, who should carry them,
Exactly.
the limits on, there's various limits on different cards. And we'll see that in the policy when it comes out.
And Bob, did there happen to be any discussion of reimbursements? Is that
Yes.
included in the policy?
Yeah.
Yes, that's,
That was, the credit card policy is on the check register is, I always circle that Visa and the Amazon Capital, whatever that is. And those were big numbers again. And then there's also a pretty big number that was a reimbursement for a training or a conference or something. And I would
It's gonna
think,
be changing somewhat
Yeah.
because
but I would think a
for-
conference or something would all be on.
for,
A
yeah,
company credit
for
card.
travel and with the new facility here, I don't know, Pat, can you speak to, we may have less travel? Because some classes can be conducted here, but there are strict limits on what an employee, they'll be issued the card for the trip. And then they're expected to bring the receipts as soon as they're back. Yes, sir.
that's the point I was gonna make sure is that even though they use it, they gotta turn in the receipts and reconcile everything
And they
correctly.
do, and you'll get this, they have to sign for that and acknowledge it when they return.
And all the employees that are going to be able to use the card are gonna sign the
Right.
policy as well.
Right.
And does it articulate what it can be used for and not used for?
I can't tell you specifics, but yeah, that was spelled out.
I think it might be a good idea when a committee approves policy, that maybe the rest of the board just email it out. And I know we said we will, but,
this happened yesterday evening at 4:00, 4:30. And it was the committee to approve it, to bring it to the board for their blessing.
that'll
It's
be
not on
next
the agenda, so our plan was to mention it today. It'll be on next month's
so
agenda.
next month's is stacked up already. We're gonna have
Busy.
quite a bit to do.
Yes, sir.
Well, what we did is, I think, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, there was only like one or two credit cards, which
There's-
got got
We only
to-
have one credit card.
one credit card, which got to be a real difficulty with people traveling and whatnot. So now I think there's 2 or 3 cards for staff here and then 1 card for traveling. Is that correct? I don't
That's-
remember it exactly off the top of my head. James, do you remember anything on it?
That was correct. We were gonna have 2 for the employees, and then Pat was gonna have 1, and there's gonna be another float. So I believe 5 total cards. 2 would be general employees, and the other 3 are restricted to staff for staff use.
And that seems pretty reasonable to me. Pat always has one in his wallet and then the other ones are available to hand out. So that's reasonable.
Yeah, it was
Um,
like Pat, Philip, wastewater, and then the 2 that we would let go for training are incidental.
Thank you, James.
I
That-
think,
That about covers it. I hope if I've
That's
left
perfect. Thank
anything
you.
out, Fred, speak up over there.
Nope, you're good. Covered it well.
all right, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Mr. King, anything to report on the investment committee?
No, our
Nothing to
next
report,
meeting will
thank
be after the close of the second quarter in July. So we'll have a report then.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sherman, any report on the bylaws?
No, and I've noted the HR committee will take that up. Maybe we can determine if we need to delete that from the bylaws.
Thank you.
That's,
Thank you.
that's a,
Got
if
a
we don't need
question.
it, we don't need it.
Has the bylaws met at, our bylaws committee met at all yet?
No, we haven't. I was waiting on some information. We got it and then I'm injured. So I've been down a little bit. So we haven't met.
Thank you. Executive committee, nothing to report, no meetings, formal meetings held. Public service committee, Mr. Frias, you have a memo?
Yeah, so in the packet, we inserted the memo and some comments as to the meeting that we held on May the 11th. We met with Big Brothers Big Sisters branch director, Ms. Rian. Is it Rian or Rihanna?
Brianna.
Rianne. And very nice lady. She gave us a very good understanding of her organization and the challenges that they faced. And obviously with our newly philanthropic efforts that we're trying to do for the community, she understands that it has to be in our service area, which Comal and Guadalupe County are. I'm not gonna go through the whole, PowerPoint slide. I'm pretty sure y'all read it. But this organization is an organization that does make a big impact in the community, especially at the youth level, which is a part of our purpose and goal and mission statement. So I think in the future, I know this was also brought up is the use of the building for the public, right? It was talked about into what capacity. I think for philanthropic efforts to assist organizations like this, the boardroom, can host a lunch or something like that. It gives back in a way that it ties the community to this building, not only, and I'm not trying to say, okay, it needs it for birthday parties or for family reunions or weddings. That's not the mindset that I have vision for this room specifically, but it's to help organizations that are trying to help the community and at least give them the venue to give that outreach so that the public feels this is also their building as well. So that's kind of our thought process behind it. Other than that, we're gamefully trying to engage more and more as we continue. So
John, I have one other comment. So in that meeting, I'm on. In that meeting, we discussed potentially using the facility for an event. And one of the things that is on our list of needed policies is we need a use
policy,
Policy
a
of some
facility
sort.
use policy. Yeah.
So we kind of had to tap the brakes on that.
Yeah.
And then also, there's limited space in this room where we have
Public access.
public access. I don't know if this room was the only room that was intended to
So
be used by the facilities committee, or what
I
was the
think the-
plan for the rest of the
I think the
building?
design, from our discussions was anything public related was gonna be mainly in this venue area, the boardroom and just kind of that front area. Other than that, the back of the buildings beyond the gates, security doors, stuff like that, that's all gonna be for employee only. And training back there, obviously, if we do host training events, the facilities committees also talked about a certain policies that need to be go. So that's gonna be added to all the other policies that we have. We're gonna add that as to, something to be worked on and get done and finalized. So we'll work on that on priority wise to all the other stuff, but we definitely need to get a move on that. So, and Sam is tracking that. So,
Okay.
Britt, you got any other comments?
Nope.
And
Never-
I'll make a comment to that. So the original design was, yes, to use this for, meetings, whatever. So all of this stuff is portable. It can be all put away and stored. So this whole room can be utilized for stuff. So that's why we thought of this stuff, the furniture that we have is so that it could be used.
Right. And the only thing is, we have to look at insurance, we have to look at the purpose, we have to look at a lot of other things, which is why we need a policy
Yep.
for usage.
Agreed.
And obviously a formal form for people to allocate, hey, I would like to book this day. We need to determine a rate or, if we're going to charge them or not. And with the Big Brother, Big Sisters, and with our efforts of helping the community, I personally don't want to see us charging them like a certain dollar amount, saying, hey, you're gonna have to pay us now for using this when we're trying to tie in the community to say, come in here, use this area, you're paying for it. You have the ability to use this for, efforts that we believe meet the needs of what we're trying to accomplish.
I appreciate that. I think it's a great program. There will be a cost to GVSUD with staff to be able to.
Even as
sponsor
simple
it.
as
So-
putting all the chairs and tables
And-
away is
Correct.
somebody.
Cleaning,
So-
all of the others. So we
Again,
just need to
Whoever
get
whoever showed up late, Pat, is who you have put everything away.
who's it gonna be?
We'll find someone to punish.
But then they still have a salary and an hourly rate that is
I'll do
being
it.
paid to them.
I
to do
I
that.
can do. it for
But you
free.
guys understand too, this is real fresh, real new. We're trying to venture out in an area that we have never done before. We just need to brainstorm, get that packaged up, present it, and then go from there.
Great
So,
work.
Well, there's unintended, unthought of things and even legal, perhaps if people gonna
Yeah.
use
Mhm.
facility, sign a liability release, things
yeah,
like.
well, they gotta get insurance for the day. I mean, there's a lot of things they have to do. So,
You're familiar with that.
yep. I
It
mean,
was brought up at the
Yeah.
meeting, by the way.
they were gonna cover the whole
This event
insurance.
that she's talking about probably is not gonna work here, but when they have those kind of events, they get insurance. So that policy we're talking about probably needs to talk
About something like
about
that. yeah.
liability insurance.
And that's something that we just stumbled into because it was the first time someone said, I believe she wanted to put a boxing ring. in
That's right.
Well, it's a rock, paper,
Well,
scissors
we're
boxing
supposed to
ring.
alert them.
So,
You didn't do the bill.
knockout, drag
You
out.
did
So,
that.
yeah,
Good work.
anyways,
I think the whole board's on,
So-
on page with you on that.
awesome.
So,
Cool. That's all my report.
all right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Frias? All right, let's move on to item 3, CRWA board meeting. Ms. Miller?
It's always me, huh?
I-
Okay. So the meeting started at 6 PM and ended at 9 PM. There were 17 board members present. President Tim administered the oath of office to 9 board members. We had the election of officers, and the ones that have been in positions were voted in again. Pat was reappointed to the Alliance Regional Water Authority Board of Directors. Nathan Pence of GBRA came and spoke to us on endangered species. He gave a presentation over his background in habitat conservation, Endangered Species Act, 3 freshwater mussels candidates, authorization, and the timeline next steps for CRWA. If the species loses its endangered status, CRWA can amend the plan to remove the species that is no longer endangered. The endangered species are only associated with surface water. Mr. President asked what happens if an entity decides not to participate and it is determined they do have an impact. Mr. Pence stated he does not tell other entities, individuals, or U.S. Fish and Wildlife who he is talking to. However, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or an environmental non-governmental organization can file a lawsuit if an entity decides not to participate. If CRWA participates in the plan, an entity who receives 100% of their water from CRWA, for example, but does not participate in the plan, that entity is still covered under CRWA's permit. The request from Mr. Pence is for CRWA staff to provide the information requested to initiate the beginning portions of the plan, and President Foos advised CRWA staff to provide the information. It does not encumber CRWA until cost is determined and we decide if we want to move forward. He couldn't give us a number on the cost because we haven't accepted into it yet. So once that happens, then he does his investigation and then he'll move forward with that. So it has to do with, supposedly there's some endangered species mussels that are in some of our water areas for CRWA. And so that's why I'm reading this, because it could affect Green Valley as well. So Adam gave a presentation of the extreme and exceptional drought in our area. He stated, based on the data from the San Antonio Airport, he have received more precipitation in April of 2023 compared to April 2022, which after all the rain we just had, that's probably not the issue anymore. Wells Ranch, production is averaging between 6 to 7 MGD. Staff is ready to install the pumps for well 1, but CRWA is still waiting on the contract for the rehabilitation work. CRWA staff can reinstall the pumps and complete the rehabilitation work later in the year if CRWA needed to. The repairs on well 15 should be complete on May 10th and hoping it will be back in production by June. Staff is working on changing operations at the plant to put clear well 1 back into production. There was a 24-inch PVC raw water line that split due to it being laid on a rock. It caused 5 wells to be out of production and was repaired the next day. Wells Ranch 3. There was a meeting on May 11th to discuss the debt schedule that was distributed by Samco on March 21st. The 24-inch and 30-inch pipeline and the availability of water. So CRWA has acquired half of the leases they need for the project. The other half is tied up with an attorney in Gonzales, and Mr. Wilson has been in communication with the attorney. Mr. Wilson is also our legal participant at CRWA. Mr. Rosenberg, CRWA's attorney since 1988, gave his 90-day notice of resignation. He will do his best in the last 90 days to carry out the assignments he currently has. He will be available indefinitely within his ability to respond to requests and assist CRWA. CRWA will be going out for RFQs for attorneys. Sorry, it's a long one.
Thank you,
I
Ms.
had a-
Miller. Any
I had a
questions?
question.
Yes.
Regarding the endangered mussel or clam or whatever it was, we kind of need to stay on top of that because I don't know if people have seen what's happened in California. They created their own drought, and they created their own drought because they were worried about a 3-inch fish. So that killed farming, that killed everything in California. So when we say something's endangered and we have to look at it, it could be very, very critical. I mean, you wouldn't think a 3-inch fish was that important in California, but look at California the way they've been for years. So we need to watch this, and if it looks like this thing is serious and it might affect our water flow, we're going to have to start looking for water in other locations really fast, because unfortunately a clam is more important than people drinking fresh water or for farmers. I mean, California is a perfect example of it. Look up the Delta smelt. That is the fish that caused it in California. So we just need to watch that.
They actually brought that up at the CRWA meeting.
And James, you're right. And it doesn't just happen in California. The 281 North TxDOT project was delayed for years because they discovered a blind cave spider that was on the endangered species list somewhere on the project route. Or that's how it's been explained to me. So it could happen around here as well. I did have a question regarding the Wells Ranch Phase 3. In the meeting, they stated that volume commitments from the member entities have been discussed. When was that discussed? Do y'all recall? Were y'all on the board at that
Not
time?
privy to the.
Yeah, and that
capital
wasn't discussed
discussions.
in open session, so that might have been Ramos, whatever his name is, talking to the entities on that.
Mr. Allen may have.
Everything with Wells Ranch 3 is still proposed. It's still got many moving parts, and it'll be months or maybe even longer before it really comes together as a package. Because there's entities across the river that we call the Hayes Caldwell Group that needs a pipeline from our area up north to there, which is extremely expensive. And there's still discussion on that. They haven't decided on what size that pipeline is going to be. The biggest benefit to Green Valley is because we bought in heavily on Wells Ranch 2. Our upfront cost with this project is pretty minimal, but it is represent some additional water to us. And then we probably have less investment in this than anybody else would because of our current position. East Central and Green Valley is probably the only two entities that are asking for water to come this way from the Wells Ranch project, which we already take water that way. So we have the less investment. However, there's still a lot of moving parts to this. And that's why I haven't brought much to the board, because it changes, seems like month to month. Main thing I want to know is, okay, what amount of water are we going for? I'm talking about the entire project. Is it secured? Can we get our hands on it? Can we export it? And what are the costs? We can't even consider the cost until we know what the project's going to be. I didn't want to bring something to y'all saying, well, it's this, but it could be that. Well, especially Mr. Sherman, he's going to want to know details.
Yeah, I'm
And
looking
want
for
to
the-
know
I'm looking for
what
the
we're
numbers.
investing in and why, what are we getting for that money, and what's the cost? And so I can't tell you that right now.
And the leases are still incomplete.
Some of the leases are
Right.
still incomplete. They haven't got them, and I didn't want to muddy the water on a project until we know exactly what it's going to be.
And one of them, I think it was Martinsdale, they backed out. They were on the list to acquire water from the leases and they backed out. And I think it was Springs Hill that requested, I think, more water
Yes.
than they originally asked. So
Correct.
it's like he said, it's constantly changing. So, my little report was just because I just added to the report. So
Right.
So what budget year do you think we would need to make a decision on? Or when does CRWA need to know what volume Green Valley needs? And then, if we had a meeting on May 11th to discuss a debt schedule, we have a general idea, even if it's a moving target. I just want to know, are we talking about 1,000 acre feet and $5 million? Are we talking about 10,000 acre feet and $50 million?
Every entity went around the table and just projected, okay, if you out in this project, how much would you want? That's how they started,
What did we say?
2,000 acre feet.
Okay.
I would take 5 if it was available. However,
And this specific discussion is one, I was looking at Gary.
we've looked at 3 different variations of that debt schedule, and none of them are complete. They've changed. And
Then yell at them and say, I'm busting your chops because I want to know how much we might have to cost, how much it
Well,
might cost.
our last Board of Managers meeting, or last Wells Ranch 3 meeting, I said, I need direct secure numbers. I want to know what water we have secured. I don't care what we could get. I want to know what we have. So when we can't finance a project, we don't know what we're getting.
Absolutely.
I need to know those numbers. What is the timeline? Is everybody in? Who's out? We have to be careful with this because you only have so many shots at this water. Because there's a lot of players out there competing for the same water we're trying to get. If they get advanced, then that water is no longer available to us. And so it's very critical. It's an important project. It needs to be done, but the timing of that project is very critical. And everybody's debt schedule is very critical. Can they withstand the debt schedule? I don't think any of the other entities have done a bond test to see what they can qualify for. I haven't even ventured into that because I don't know what the final projects and numbers are going to be.
Well, a couple months ago at the meeting, there was a discussion on that exact topic that, I believe CRWA, Steve and Christie jump in if I'm speaking incorrectly, but CRWA was wanting to have some evidence from its member entities that they can pay the portion that they're asking for.
And that is true, but we have to know what we're trying to pay for, and we don't know that. And
We're not going to buy a pig in a poke.
I don't want to throw a kink in the spokes, but it's a good project. We already have infrastructure built. We have some capacity still sitting there waiting for us that we can fulfill. But we need to have a more positive progress moving forward with it. And there's a lot of variables out there that if y'all asked me the questions, I could not answer. And that's what I said. I didn't want to
And
muddy it all up.
You're answering how I believe. I mean, you can't tell me an answer that you don't know.
That's
Um,
true.
And it's, I don't believe you've done anything that you should know the answers to, but this is what I've been catching from the peanut gallery in the CRWA meetings. A couple key items like this are perking my ears up, and I'm,
Right.
following up on them because, if we're going to have a cost, which we will, to be part of that, it might need to be in our rate study. And I don't know if it's in our rate study. We haven't seen it yet. There's a lot of moving parts, like you said, and I'm trying to,
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
trying to track the dollars. That's my biggest concern.
It's hard to say at this point. And we might find that there's a different Wells Ranch project that we participate in, not with the other entities. I call it Wells Ranch 2.5 instead of 3. That where maybe East Central and Green Valley go together and acquire additional water to bring to our take points that we already have, which may be less infrastructure costs, but there again, I don't know that either. So there's been a variety of conversations among the entities. And if you look back at the reports that we've had over the years, we're talking about the same stuff we did on the 11th, I think he said, that we talked about 3 months ago, and it hasn't changed.
No
a whole-
movement.
Not, it's
Uh,
moving, but it hasn't moved to where we're ready to lock everything down.
So Mr. Cooper constantly yells at me about me helping keep the meeting moving. So I think you understand my concerns
do.
and you guys hear my concerns.
Absolutely. And,
I
and
do have a couple more on the CRWA meeting, and I didn't send you all a note, but there was on the operations report, it said the different facilities are creating X, Y, and Z amount of volume. And my question was, what are they supposed to be making, or what's the capacity of those? And did you happen to follow up on that?
Yeah, they're pretty close, 9 million a day. We've seen it fluctuate between 9 and 12 million a day. I have seen 14 million out of the plant. That was what was purchased on the filters originally. Was supposed to reach that capacity, I believe, wasn't it, Jason? 14 million a day. And we're able to produce about 9 million a day. They've made changes on their pre-treatment, which has allowed them to increase that capacity. I think sometimes last summer we were doing 6 to 7 million on a good day, and they've increased it by good 2 million a day. And they're pretty much consistently hitting that number with the change in the pre-treatment of the water.
And specifically with the nanostone stuff and whatever's going on. with the generators.
I will correct you,
Sorry.
Mr. Allen. There was I call it a decimal point issue, an
Yeah.
accounting error that caused the actual real production numbers to be less.
Well, I was at a meeting yesterday and David reported we're doing about 9 million a day.
That's still not the 14 that they had.
No,
And they said
That
that
is
when
true.
with the heat coming, it's gonna get worse. Their numbers are gonna drop.
and that's in a water system, that's not unusual. The lake levels and stuff, the heat and the cold, or the change of temperature, change the turbidity of the water, or the other things you deal with in the water quality as you coming into the plant. So they had to change their pre-treatment to accommodate that.
And I know Mr. Cooper is on top of that specifically. I don't want to ask any questions that might be tied to executive session. If there's going to be a cost to Green Valley, or if Green Valley is paying for a volume of water and they're not able to produce the full volume that is to be distributed to us, I want to know about that so we can understand.
I have a baseball bat with me every time I walk into the meeting saying, we've got to have dollar amounts, got to have dollar amounts.
And it's,
So,
and the same,
yeah.
points I'm directing
Totally
pathway.
understood.
I need y'all to.
And another example I'll give to Mr. Hendricks's comment, the situation with the endangered species is not a problem today. They're projecting a potential issue coming up. So the question to CRWA was, do you want to be part of the legal process when and if this happens? And CRWA said, yes, we do. We want to be prepared.
And
So
from the
we did not
yeah.
commit to any money. There was no dollar amount put on this. We just said, we want to play.
And from the peanut gallery, that guy spoke too much. He went into far too much detail, but
It,
just having
His points
staff
were
work
made.
with him is very reasonable until he comes up with a dollar amount. And then if it's excessive, then y'all.
or
gotta
when
make a
it's going to
decision.
happen, or when the endangered species is going to be
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
you want a seat at the table.
Exactly. All right, before we move on to the engineer's report, I'm sorry, any other comments, Ms. Miller? I apologize. Any other comments on the CRWA?
No,
Okay,
Good, thank you.
fine, thank you. All right, it is 10:33. Let's take a 10-minute break for the cause. Meet back here at 10:43.
Yep.
Mr.
I'm here.
Hendricks?
Yeah, can you hear
Okay,
me?
thank you. 10:45, we're back in session. Let's continue on with item 4, engineers report on water wastewater construction projects, proposed new developments from Tri-Hydro Engineers and Utility Engineers Group. Mr. Montgomery and Mr. Vreeland. I think that's on. Thing on.
Is that on?
There you go.
There it is. Good morning. Provided a memo in your packet and a map. Just a couple of updates from the memo. I think I had it in there already, but all of the pipe on the western arm, so phase 2 sewer, all the pipe is in the ground, going through testing. Testing is going well. I was out there with Water Development Board on Tuesday morning. Everything's going good there, so we're moving towards closeout. Installing some gates and fences and grading and revegetation and final testing. Lakeside Pass water line that was approved month before last. Contractors complete. They laid the last pipe on Lakeside yesterday. Obviously some cleanup and testing to go through on that. And then they'll move over to North Santa Clara Road next week. Staking is complete on Santa Clara. We have the permit through the city of Santa Clara. So it's all a go on that one. So it's the only updates I had. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Mr. Vreeland?
Great, well, thank you. You all have my report, and there is just one update I was going to present because I know it's been a topic, and that was just the Hakerville Road. We are recommending to close that project out. We're not recommending any sort of monetary damage, but we are recommending close it out, and we will, definitely be taking performance in consideration on future bids.
Is that contractor requesting any extended time or overhead for general conditions effort or just?
No, it's just that basically in order to close it out, there will be additional days necessary because they're over the contract limit.
Do you know how far over the contract limit they are?
It was quite a bit. It was 60 days on substantial and maybe about the same on final.
I know I always ask you that, so I appreciate you knowing to talk about this one, but we've talked about some of the, I believe it was joint easements or somehow complicated with others, so if they did a good job and the water line is tested.
It's, it is in, it's tested, it's, the vegetation's established at this point. We're just, needing to close it out. Any other questions on the other portions of the report? I guess I can just add a quick note of, the projects are going pretty smooth right now. We have the elevated going up. They're done with the column. They're starting on the bowl. I think there's some pictures in there. They're going to start welding that up. And, eventually we'll get to the point where they start raising that, and we can definitely make sure the board's aware if they want to go out and watch that go up. And
Anticipated completion for that project, what are you thinking?
for the
This year?
elevated,
Yeah. with the
so
elevated tower?
contractually, I think they have until it's March or April, I believe.
Do you
but
think it's gonna
they're-
be sooner than that?
They're anticipating, quite a bit sooner,
December?
late
Possibly?
December, sometime in December is what
Okay.
they're hoping for, they're shooting for, but you never, they technically have until, March or
Right.
April next year.
Okay.
No major rain issues for y'all?
There's been some rain days here and there, but in all, nothing that they haven't been able to deal with. It has, impacted, say some of the trenching, they have to dewire the trenches again once they get the event, but hasn't made any significant impacts.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. President, I have, and this isn't directly related to any of the engineering firms, and it's maybe out of order. If I am, please correct me.
Please feel free.
Several days ago, because I traversed South Santa Clara Road quite a bit, and I noticed, I believe that area is Dove Song, if I'm not mistaken. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, Dove Song, yes.
I noticed they seem to be back at work
Yeah, they're,
right along Santa Clara. Have they gone back and decided to go back into phase 1?
actually, they're going to phase 2. They're constructing phase 2 right now. Phase 1, a little more expensive unit, requires a bridge and some other things. So they decided to do unit 2, get that one up and running, I believe is their plan. I haven't talked to them directly about that, but it's what obvious is to us. Unit 2 will get that one going, and they've paid their fees and are moving forward with
Right.
Unit 2, so.
Yeah, I do remember that they had decided to go forward with phase 2 and that they had asked to transfer the fees and we said no.
That's correct.
So, okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thanks for the diversion, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to item F. Consider purchasing 2 half-ton pickup trucks to replace 2 surplus vehicles, number 8, number 14, for the Water Utility Division and Meter Division. Review the attached documents from past meetings, take action as necessary. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, sir. I'm trying to bring this back to you this month. I think there was some confusion last month, and I supplied the minutes and stuff from the January board meeting, where we approved the purchase of one vehicle, which we ordered that vehicle, and that was a new addition to our list of vehicles. For some reason, I was thinking we got approval for 2 vehicles. We did not purchase 2, so don't worry, I didn't go out on a limb and purchase 2. We just ordered that one. In fact, we're still waiting for its arrival. Has not come to us yet. We ordered that a few days after the board meeting, so we're still waiting on it. But we have 2 replacement vehicles, Unit 8 and Unit 14, that we're needing to replace. In fact, both of those are pretty much out of commission because we don't want to spend any money on repairing them. So I was asking the board to approve the purchase of 2 vehicles. And if you look at the numbers from January to now, the numbers are all over the place. It's hard to pin down on what a vehicle is going to cost, but we're anticipating 50 to 55,000 on any vehicle. The numbers are all over the place. You know, the one that we have in the memo in front of you, the 3 quotes we have there, you see the lowest is 49, the highest is 60. Well, we wouldn't go after the 60 because it's way out of the ballpark. However, we're not real sure on the 49 because that was hard to get that quote from that dealership that day from that person. And we had to go back to them several times. So we're not sure if these vehicles will be there when we get ready to purchase them, but we're thinking 50 to 55,000 per vehicle at least. If you remember, you also last month approved $10,000 toward the purchase of a vehicle. There again, there was that confusion thinking we had already approved 45,000 or so for a vehicle already, 40 to 45. So that's where we are today. These 2 will replace 2 older trucks. One of them has already been parked and not used at all. One we still use occasionally until we can find this replacement.
So you're looking for $110,000 to purchase 2 pickups at $55,000 apiece?
Yes, sir. Well, use that 10,000 y'all approved last month to equip it with lights, safety equipment and other things.
And the 10,000 will be enough to equip both?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll accept a motion to
Hold on.
approve.
So I was also.
We need to put it on the table before we go to discussions.
Up to
I have a
A
motion.
dollar amount.
dollar amount up to
Yeah. 55,000 or 110.
110,000.
110.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
No, I'm asking. I'm not, I have no comments. I know they're needed.
So last month, when we approved the 10,000, I asked that we were to get a roll-up list of all the capital vehicles, trailers, mowers generated. I didn't see that list in this packet. Do we have that somewhere?
Of what we purchased so far this
Of
year.
what, everything recorded,
I-
what we purchased?
And Mr. Freeze, I apologize. I forgot about that request, but we've purchased 2 things this year
The
this fiscal year,
trailers,
that's
the
a trailer.
mowers,
and the lawnmower, and that's 40.
we all, and the truck. We approved a truck. Yeah, 2 trailers, 2 mowers.
Yeah. Yeah. we
Right,
haven't
but that's,
purchased it
but that's
yet.
accounted for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what the confusion again last month. I thought we'd already purchased when we
Mhm.
ordered it. We haven't, it hadn't got here, so we haven't purchased it. So currently we've purchased a
One truck.
trailer and 1 lawnmower. It's 42,959.
There's 2 trailers though that
The
we
second
purchased.
trailer we didn't purchase.
Well, see,
But
we don't,
it's ordered, right?
but we approved the purchase of it.
So we have funds.
We did not approve the purchase because we were going to bring it back and get you some better quotes. And I think that was on the 21-foot tilt trailer. We decided we are holding off on that
Okay,
for next fiscal year possibly.
but as you can see, the confusion
Right.
as to what they're thinking, the second one was bought or?
We
not?
haven't purchased anything that y'all have not approved. We approved the 128-foot trailer, which we received, I think it's 28 foot, and the lawnmower.
You got the
And then
gooseneck,
we
right?
ordered the Ranger.
Okay, so the gooseneck, then you had, and the lawnmower. The 2 lawnmowers, right? In our eyes, it's purchased,
Yes,
it's
agree.
allocated,
Yeah.
so. Right,
So a pickup, a trailer, and a lawnmower is what we purchased so far. We didn't move forward with the other quote that we gave you back in January for a 21-foot trailer.
mhm.
Because we didn't have a quote that y'all liked at that time. We were not sure on it. What we thought we had, we went back to talk to them. That's not what they were giving us. So we said, well, never mind. So we held off on that. We're not proceeding with that purchase right now.
So then those funds, see, and this is why I wanted that
Those
sheet.
funds were never approved
But
for that purchase.
Again, that's the reason why that accountable sheet to
Right.
show we didn't purchase, it wasn't just a tracker of some kind
Okay.
to at least understand where we're at on that.
Well, if you see
So-
in your budget report, it's spent so far. Only thing outstanding now is that Ranger
Well, on
pickup.
the budget report, it shows $0 on the capital expenditures for vehicles.
Yeah, 42,959 is what we've spent. And that's for the
Which-
lawnmower and the trailer.
Which one are we on? Which, sorry, call out the line item,
Yeah, it's the very last.
100, 100.
this 900 and 100?
900, 100.
900, 100,
This
vehicle and equipment purchase still shows $0.
42,959 is what we spent.
900, 100 shows $42,000 spent.
So why do? Sorry, maybe I highlighted the
No,
wrong
you
one.
highlighted the wrong.
Okay, sorry, I highlighted the wrong one.
So 40.
My mistake. I highlighted the
Please,
one.
what- Can you express what your concern is here?
Well, I just wanted to know exactly what we've purchased, what wasn't purchased. Now I see the total dollar amount here. Obviously, we didn't change the budget amount on that one,
Right.
which that's next month's argument. Got
Right,
that.
Right.
So if we're at 42,000, 43,000 right now on April,
Okay, but that's
But
not
that
what we're
doesn't
considering. What we're
include-
considering is the
Right.
motion on the table is for,
correct,
for
but we're-
purchase of
I'm
vehicle.
getting to that point. So the trailer, the mowers and all that part is the 42. To Mr. Davenport's comment, we haven't purchased the other $45,000 vehicle, so that's not accumulated in here. So that brings this number up truly to about 98 some thousand. And now we're adding 110 to it. So now we're already into 200,000 total for the year if we go forward with this. Everybody tracking? Am I missing something?
And that's what I'm looking for on a plan so that we understand we need $200,000 worth of vehicles this year. And if we need $200,000 worth of
Well,
vehicles,
the board needs to remember that we told staff that we would remove the $250,000 requested, that each vehicle would have to come back to us individually.
the board
Yeah.
And-
also
and-
told staff to get us a list.
Can I interject?
I appreciate that and I understand that. What we have been very clear with staff about is that we need to have a good understanding what vehicles are new, what vehicles are replacements, and if they're still within the original $250,000 budget that was discussed last year. All of this is true about this request.
But you get
They're
what
only
I'm-
at two, no, I totally understand and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Allen, but their intent and full plan is to keep advancing the inventory and the status of each vehicle so that the board has a clear understanding of what the future needs are versus what replacements are.
Yeah.
Correct.
We haven't received that yet. We don't
Can I-
know what the future
Well,
needs are
James.
Can I
until we
interject?
get a new.
James
Please,
wants to-
Mr. Hendricks, please.
Okay, we discussed this in the finance committee, and we see the
you.
turmoil that this is causing right now. And what the
Mhm.
finance committee has tentatively been discussing with Pat at the last meeting was that we can't continue to buy trucks this way. We can't continue to do it this way because we're in May and he's only bought one of the trucks that he needed. There's been confusion. So what we, as a finance committee so far, and you two guys jump on me if I'm wrong on this, is for the budget coming up, we need to kind of change things. We need to say, okay, Pat thinks that this year he's going to need $250,000. And we're kind of going back to the way it was, but unfortunately, we're seeing that the new way isn't working. So
Amen.
Pat can buy trucks within that $250,000 thing without us having to give our blessing, but he has to report to the board immediately, hey, I used some of that $250,000. I bought this truck at 47,000 because these quotes, nothing is lining up the way it needs to, and prices are changing literally daily.
Okay, so please understand though, the part of our thought process back then was we never had a clear articulation of the needs. It was a wish list, and that wish list that Andrew presented was extravagant.
And it was wild. stuff
And it
that
was
we
wild,
didn't
and
need.
there was
Yeah.
no mowers, there was no trailers, there was nothing of the need that Pat now has presented that we've been working with him on a case-by-case basis. Now, obviously, going
Exactly.
forward, we want this smoother. The NISC system is supposed to help with that. And I know Pat understands that we want the fleet management program to establish standards on when things are going to be replaced. We need to establish that now for next year as to what is cycling out so we can know what trucks are running and tie a line item budget number for that specific vehicle that's going to
Well, that's
replace.
contrary to what Mr. Hendricks just said. What he's saying is that next year, he
wants to
expects
do
to
a
have
full-
a full list of needs so that
Yes.
we can give Mr. Allen a budget amount to be able to fulfill the total
Yes.
budget,
Those needs
not
should
line
have-
items.
But those
not-
needs should have a
should
dollar.
be
amount.
listed, correct.
As
Right. I
to
just wanted to
why
make sure
the
that we're
total
clear.
amount
What
is.
we want to
Understand that.
do, and I think the finance committee has articulated this well, we want to save this process that we're doing right
agree.
now.
I agree, and I'm okay with that if we have an idea.
Correct,
and-
understood. So you want
that
the
part.
list.
Yeah.
We need the list.
And I know,
their
he-
staff's
and Pat
working on it.
understand, we talked about this enough where
Yeah.
this list right here as to what is aged, what's gonna be recycled, what's gonna be added, he's tracking that he needs to get that done. So, but I just wanted to make sure everybody here understands from that 42,000 plus the 45,000 that's still outstanding, that's coming to us, we're at almost 100,000 plus 110,000 that we're asking for now. That's gonna bump us to 200,000. Is there anything else for the rest of the year, Pat, that you are expecting to be hit with? John, chime in, please.
But I don't see how they can do, sorry, Pat.
Answer the question.
It's,
Would you answer? I mean,
go ahead, Pat.
We
is ridiculous.
try to anticipate not getting rid of vehicles till it's time. And that's why we're trying to replace these two. And you got to remember the list that we had, that we talked about, that was produced last summer during
Mhm.
our budget workshop.
Right,
That was gone.
right.
We know that, and I agree with you. That was not the way to do it. That was what presented. We decided, nope, we're not doing that, and that's fine. I agreed with that. But I review the vehicles with John, Jeremiah, our sewer guys. What are your needs? What are you not? I need a list. And they produce those lists, and I usually say, no, 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 yes, maybe, we'll see. And but then we have the vehicles that have been running down the road anywhere from 3 years to 10 years, and you never know when it's gonna stop. You know, it doesn't seem like whether it's an older truck or a newer truck, you're still having issues nowadays. They all give you trouble. But these have been giving us more trouble. We're starting to spend more money than they're worth. And that's why they're on the list to get rid of and need to be replaced. We could have some more, but I don't want to buy any more between this end of this fiscal year, but I can't promise you that I won't come back and say, well, we had another one crater on us. We had to do something different. And so it's
If you're looking for a guarantee that there's not going to be any more requests, I don't think you can make.
Hey, James is
Mr.
gone.
James.
James is gone.
Oh,
Yeah, James is
right.
gone.
Hold on till we get him back. Nick, would you like to sing us a song?
I got my teapot arm, you know, the angle is just about the way it needs to be.
All right. Come on, James.
It was working really well there.
Yeah.
There's
That was,
always-
all he did was beat me to the punch. I was gonna jump in on the same time.
There's always glitches.
And we've got enough retired military on staff that I'm sure they know a few,
Guy.
Hoorah songs.
No, I'm not thinking any Jodies. Or if he realizes it.
Sure he does. He can't hear us.
Double dipping.
No, you're right.
So, Steve,
Okay.
did we just say that James left the meeting and document that he's just as if one of us left the room?
We still have
Oh,
a
we gotta
quorum.
vote, Yeah,
Um,
technically, in a way, he stepped out.
Anybody have him on their cell phone?
the problem is we have a motion on the table.
Still have a quorum to vote, though.
Still a quorum. How would we do that?
We
Just
document
announce that he's
left
left.
the
and
room.
What do we do here, Shan?
All I was saying is that, well, if James is away from the meeting, after a little while, we can go forward because we have a quorum.
We've made an
regardless.
attempt.
It's just as if I had to step out to the restroom.
Exactly. Good point.
It's
Good
the
point.
same
We
difference.
we just marked him as absent.
To
at
the
this point.
extent that he's here and he participates, then that's where those requirements of being able to.
Well, then let's leave it to staff to continue to try and get a hold of him, but let's move forward.
Okay.
Is that fair? All right. Any other comments on item F before we move to a
You wanna
vote?
Say something?
Oh, no. Get-
Legit technical issue.
Legit. As
Not
if-
the one where they just
opposed
say
to
it, just to
illegit.
say it, cause
And it
they
wasn't
messed
a
up on
short-
human error.
It was not a short between the headset. Oh, you know
That's
that
the good
term,
part.
dude.
It's not on our side.
Maybe he ground checked. Pretty good considering he just had that surgery, was it?
Looks like he's doing really well. His wife did too. Huh?
Mess with your spine like that. and
Yeah.
you're Packing off.
Well, remember the last time he couldn't even sit in a chair though. All right, I'm gonna let staff continue on. Let's move on. We have a motion on the table and a second. Would you like to take?
I have one more comment. So, under these quotes, we list the GMC as an SLE, which is the lowest tier package, is my understanding. I want to make sure that we're buying work trucks, not higher package trucks. On the previous version of some quotes we got, we had AT4 package trucks. I personally drive an AT4 package vehicle, and I can tell you that's not the most cost-effective vehicle. So if we're gonna authorize more money once, I want to make sure that we're buying work trucks, even if we have to order them. And to everyone's point earlier, if we can improve the way we do this on the next budget cycle, we can order the trucks
In
immediately
advance.
at the beginning of the budget cycle so that they're.
James, you're back?
Or really
Yes.
what we're looking to do is to allocate the money up to a point to where he doesn't have to come back to us and throw in a month or two's delay while
And-
we
and-
get board approval. Yeah.
You wanna- Hang on, he's getting you a mic. Hang on, he's bringing you a mic.
Yeah, I
While
couldn't
we
hear
got
him.
quote on,
Here you have us buying trucks, we're at the dealer's mercies, whatever they have on the lot.
Yep.
Because we're having to get you a
Right,
quote.
and I was always.
Because of the
saying-
process that we put in place.
But this process we put in place was because we didn't get a good evaluation of what was actually needed.
Understood your
We
criticism.
all didn't agree on that. We only I approved the budget because he needed the budget approved. I did not agree on the vehicle thing because I've been on the board long enough to know that he would have to come back to us every single time he wanted something for us to prove it. And that's operations. That's not us. We're policy and procedures.
And we have a history of buying higher level vehicles than should be purchased. for
And he's
public
told you why that is because, and John's
Right.
told you too, is because they have to buy what's on the lot, especially during COVID times. There was no vehicles on the lot except the ones that they're there. So that's why they bought the ones they did.
I understand Mr. Sherman's comments and we can manage that.
Yep.
That's
And
not a
and
problem.
another suggestion is, we have crew cab vehicles. Just a regular extended cab vehicle is less expensive. There are ways that we can pinch the cost in these escalating times of vehicle cost. Because especially we run them into the ground. We do. Not by any
Ill will.
ill will or
Neglect.
neglect, thank you. It's just hard miles back and forth in town. So we don't have to buy a $50,000 vehicle. If we could buy a $45,000 vehicle and it still runs people around like they need to, it's still four-wheel drive, which I agree with.
But
I
the
think
thing
all
what
vehicles
John
should
was
be.
saying is you can't find them.
Order them.
Well.
And that could be
Can't
much
order that being in the budget.
Bobcat,
Us more to order it.
more than one person is in it. There's usually three people. Back in the day when I started fixing lick, it was just two person. That's all it is. We're sending 3 and 4 people to one lick. So you can't fit 4 people in a super cab truck. You have to have a 4-door.
So I disagree with that. Specifically, the leak repair that was done outside Mesa off of 1103, it's been a couple months ago. Every day when I come home for lunch, I notice we've got activity out there. We're doing a lot of work. And there would be 4 or 5 guys and there would be the exact number of trucks that there were people
Okay,
standing.
operational concerns
So-
can be addressed somewhere else other
So I
than
think
this
we
point in
can
time.
get by with a little bit lesser
This-
vehicle.
But
That-
the motion was for 110,000. Pat said he doesn't need the 110, he needs 100.
He didn't
Because
say that.
last month we
So it's
allocated the 10.
50,000 a vehicle, not
It-
55.
Well,
No, that's not what he said. He
Pat,
said he needs a $10,000 to continue to fit him with all of the materials.
that was from last month. The 110 is if you did 55,000 on 2 vehicles, correct, Pat?
and the reason, because the numbers we're seeing anywhere from 49 to 60.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking for a $60,000 truck. 110 tells me I have the money I need to go get what we need. I understand your comments as well as Mr. Sherman's. We don't need to buy a higher end truck. I understand that. That wouldn't be our goal anyway. John and I wouldn't do that. And if we need what we need is money to go buy vehicles. Let us go find the vehicles. I think you'll be satisfied with what we do. The 110 is more than enough. I think we can satisfy that, but I need a little extra because the grill guards, the toolboxes, the safety lights and stuff are about a $3,000 to $4,000 package
But
sometimes.
that's the money from last month.
That was the money last month.
So today you need the 110, not
Well,
100.
55,000.
That gives me some room between 45 and 55 to find that vehicle.
The motion's up to 110,000.
That doesn't mean he has to spend $110,000.
That doesn't mean I'm gonna try to
Up
spend.
to.
But I'm just trying to understand the 110 mark versus the 100, because at first you started the
What the
conversation
budget would have been.
with the 10,000.
Just looking for clarity.
So-
That's all. I understand. All right. Any other comments? All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. Would you like to take a roll call vote or everybody comfortable with a quorum vote?
And one more question for Pat. Do you need anything else of this year that you're aware
Yeah, he
of?
didn't.
Not at this time, no, sir.
Not that you're aware of.
Question.
Okay. And I
I
understand.
hope
that-
not, yeah.
You never know when something
Thank you.
dies.
But that's not a guarantee. It may not come in
Right,
the
right, right.
future.
But,
Right. I-
As he's
I
tracking today.
Appreciate your concern. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
no.
1 no, Mr. Hendricks?
I
I'm
said aye.
sorry. Aye. All right, we have 5 ayes, 1 no. Thank you.
And John and I will get together before we make any purchases and review some things.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Consider item G, consider authorizing general manager to issue a request for qualifications from potential auditors and take action as necessary. Do I have a motion to authorize Pat Allen for an RFQ for auditors?
I will so move.
I'll second it.
Moved, seconded. Any discussion?
Please
Um,
find us some good ones.
I do have a comment. So at last month's board meeting, Shan, you commented that a certain section of the code said we don't have to go out for RFQs for certain services. And I'd ask that someone email me that section of the code.
Did you ask me to email you?
I mean, I asked in the meeting, I assume someone that,
I don't remember
Okay.
that.
in any case,
Sorry.
this section, that section of the code requires us to get an RFQ for auditors.
No, the Professional Services Act prohibits you from using an RFP process, a bid process. So what we can do, and it's forbidden, it's prohibited under the Professional Services Act, which is the Government Code Section 2252 or 2254. I'll get it for you.
And I agree with that.
apologize.
No, you can't go out for proposals.
We can go out for a request for qualifications, but the Professional Services Act, what it requires is that you select someone that you feel is best qualified, and then you negotiate price terms.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure overall, we're doing all of our professional services correctly. I think all professional services require an RFQ and then you.
Yeah,
work out a
they
proposal.
don't necessarily require an RFQ, but that seems to be the best way to go about it. And that's kind of a non-legal opinion, but that way you get to see more than just the people you know.
So for clarification, Pat Allen, well, make eye contact with me here. Get it from whoever you need and email me that section so that I can understand that we've done the right thing in the past with not going out for RFQs for certain professional services. I just want to make sure we're doing it right. And if we made a hiccup, I want to capture it and go back and do it right.
I got you.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve throwing an RFQ for auditor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item H, review the non-standard water and wastewater service agreement provided by Green Valley SUD legal and feasibility studies provided by Utility Engineers Group and Tri-Hydro Engineers, and take action as necessary. The Lakeview Unit 4 FM 725 and Klein Road, New Braunfels. Who's got that one?
I believe the board has seen this one a time or two. Previously, it was called the Dome Track. It was a larger track. The developer has decided to break that into a few different tracks and use different land uses on those tracks. This is a 21.722 acre track. Prepared the study, and I believe it's ready to go to contracting. Same owner. Originally, this was all done through they own the entire tract, but they platted out this 21 acre tract, almost 22 acre tract. And it's a multifamily development. It's over in New Braunfels off of 725 and Klein Road. And our recommendation is approval.
Fire flow.
Yep.
Good to go, and it complies with New Braunfels jurisdiction.
That's correct.
In Exhibit B, under the 6 estimated cost, there's 175,000 for an offsite 8-inch. Is that Green Valley's responsibility or the developers?
No, it's the developers.
So on the payment timings, can you kind of educate us more or less based on our current policies that we have in place? At what point are these developers are supposed to be paying their initial share? At what checkpoint? are
So
we
they'll
expecting?
pay their water acquisition fee at plan approval. So they'll submit to Green Valley their plans. They'll pay the $2,000 per EDU. And then first they go to contract, then they submit construction plans, they pay their water acquisition fee. The remaining fees are paid at meter set. So whenever they come in and make their application with front office and say, I'm ready to set my meter, they have to cure all of those costs.
Okay.
The offset line, or the off-site line, they have to build that and it has to be accepted prior to setting the meter. So we won't accept their fees or extend
Until-
service until that line is in place.
So are they having to put in escrow or into an account a lot of that money up front
No,
No?
they're not escrowing anything. They just don't get service until they pay.
All right, thank you.
Big development. Said this was split in half?
Yes, I think the original track was 64 acres, I believe, and there's now 2 tracks. And they're both going to be multifamily. I believe this one is more of an apartment style development. The one closer to 725 that will be going to contract probably in the next month or two. They're, at least the plan I've seen at this point is smaller lot, like garden home type development.
Oh, Klein Road, that's probably still ETJ,
It is, yes, ETJ.
what
Yeah,
I was thinking.
right.
Mr. Cooper, if there's
Yes,
no
sir.
further questions, I'll make a motion that we approve the non-standard water or wastewater service agreement for Lakeview Unit 4, FM 725 and Klein Road, New Braunfels.
Thank you. I have a motion.
I'll
Second. Mr. Frias, seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
James,
The
do you
delay.
oppose or
Yeah.
your aye as in favor
I
for
said
it?
Your eye was a
said
little
aye.
late. Was that a nay or an aye?
No, it's an aye. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Please, James, please keep up.
I said it when you guys said it. Lag is not my problem.
All right, moving on. Receive reports from the following and take action as necessary. Mr. Rutherford, pending threatened legal litigation, legal changes affecting the district.
Yes, Mr. President, for pending or threatened litigation, I'm not aware of any threatened litigation. Pending litigation is limited to item L. So I'd like to take that into executive session very briefly. On legal changes affecting the district, you all were provided a summary of the pending legislation and status by the Schluter Group, or what do they call themselves for this? Texas Solutions Group, which is a division of that group. And anyways, the bill that is referenced at the top of that memo, I don't have it in front of me, but I read it, is what has actually advanced and has passed both chambers and is now in front of the governor for signing. I actually had to go to the legislature Friday or Monday to support that bill, and it makes some important incremental changes. It's not the be all and end all, but it makes it more difficult for a governmental entity to for like a city to basically take our territory. It makes it more difficult because it clarifies the compensation requirements, and it also provides an opportunity. These things happen more or less automatically as under the current regime at the Public Utility Commission. It provides for some due process. It provides for an appeal process directly to the commissioners, because it's handled kind of administratively the way it's currently set up. It kind of clarifies what kind of compensation that you would be entitled to if in the event that one of these went through. Again, small changes, but good changes. And if you ask for more at the legislature, you get nothing. So this is kind of where we landed.
I noticed, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's all I had. Thank you.
I noticed their comments on HB 4296, the federal loan protection against CCN, says the prognosis is dead.
Yes, yeah, that was, and in fact, even though that is dead, there were attempts at the last minute to slip that into some other legislation. And that has also been successfully defeated so far. And the session ends on Monday. So we're getting
we
there.
are still protected.
Right now, we're protected. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
So my question real quick, is after the session ends right now, at Monday, right?
Yes.
So after the fact, do we still need this lobbying group on our payroll for anything after the fact?
That's not a sham question.
You're doing such a great job. I just figured you keep running with it.
To answer your question easily is yes, and the reason why the success of that 2442 is a process that's been going on for 2 years. They support our efforts. We meet and we discuss with legislatures when they're not in session. It's sometimes more important is when they are in session, because they're familiar with where your stance is and your issues or concerns about other things. So as for many years, we've kept that consultant group going for those reasons. Because we have meetings with those legislators when they're not in session throughout the year. So in my opinion, yes, it's a very needed, unfortunately, it's a very needed effort that has to be going on all the time. Just like TRWA, I'm on the board there, we do the same thing. However, that's a different level than what we do with these guys here for Green Valley.
What would you say it's higher level, lower level? What do you
Higher
mean by
level.
different level?
Higher level. Most of the entities that belong to TRWA are 1,200 connections or less. They're mainly in there for training and other things, but the political action of TRWA is very successful. However, we have to be careful of the size of entity the Green Valley is some of the decisions that bigger entities make sometimes harm the smaller ones, or sometimes the decisions the smaller entities make harm the big ones. And so it's always a mix. And so you need these type of people working for you to iron out those issues, iron out those problems. It's at a different level than what we operate at any time. And so for that reason is why we keep them working for us.
Does East Central and all the other local entities, do they also get in on this, or are we the only one? I know CRWA has their versions, but I'm just asking if other entities
I
are
don't
also
know
in
what
this
East Central
fight.
does, can't speak for them or other entities. I pay attention to Green Valley, but they've been very helpful to us over the many years.
Texas Solution Groups, I think, said that they represent
A lot,
13
yeah.
entities.
Yes,
That
there's
number
quite a
sticks
few.
out.
They represent larger and smaller,
Mhm.
and they're well connected. And they have great tactics.
It might be an item that we just discuss with them, the scope of how much they do for us when
In
our
session,
need is
not in
lower.
session.
Off season.
We might just renegotiate our deal with them and see.
That would be a great idea, like during session, out of session.
Yeah.
So when, I mean, in your opinion, when would be a good point in time to do that? Once Monday's session closes, we have a discussion with them, or how does?
Things can still happen after the session closes, so they're still monitoring certain things at the governor's level.
Wait a couple months?
Yeah, at least.
Budget amendment review time.
Why don't we
period.
bring it in before the next fiscal year in
Gotta pay
budget?
them again.
We got to pay, whenever the next bill's due.
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Pat.
I'll discuss that with them, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to come down and talk to us. Of course, that's not something we need to negotiate in a public meeting, but we can get a group together and sit down and have a conversation with them and kind of maybe put a plan together or see if there needs to be changes and go from there.
Committee, Steve?
Mm.
Thanks.
Yeah, but every municipal.
I just wanted to add a little bit of color.
Has lobbyists. It's just a necessity these days. Maybe a cost factor, but you're crazy if you don't have a lobbyist.
Well, I just don't want to be the only entity
Oh, we're not.
that's
Paying the bill.
No,
doing
we're
that
not.
locally. I mean,
Yeah.
if no one else is
Guarantee
doing it
you
locally, then
Everybody from Church, Cibolo, you name it, Selma.
I mean, CRWA has them, ARWA has them, so.
Right.
Well, the other thing
You have
we
to
can
do
utilize
that.
Their
Yeah.
effort too.
The other thing they do for us, besides just legislative work, they help us with groundwater districts, the water industry as a whole, the PUC, the TCEQ, Texas Water Development Board. There's a variety of things that we've gotten in together that I've asked for their help with. Their cost doesn't change. It's the same thing every month, whether I use them 10 times or 60 times. It doesn't change. And so, but there's other venues that we go to that I ask for their support because of the people that I know that they know. Helps open the doors for us sometimes when we have critical issues on the water side or even the sewer side as far as that goes. So it's not just the legislative stuff that they do for us.
Thank you. Any other comments, Mr. Rutherford?
Just real briefly, I just kind of wanted to illustrate the CRWA versus our individual efforts. These guys work very, very closely with CRWA. But CRWA's critical mass of members, like Pat said, is significantly smaller than Green Valley or a handful of very large special utility districts. During this last legislative session, there was a lot of negotiation and a lot of people sitting at the table. And a good percentage of the CRWA members, I'm sorry, every time I said CRWA, I meant TRWA. Sorry, I apologize. Acronym madness. But I referenced there's a compensation component to these decertifications. There was a critical mass of TRWA member entities who would have been thrilled to have an automatic compensation thing set up where, yes, they get to take your territory, but you get $500 an acre. And that doesn't work in a growing urban area, and it's nowhere near adequate compensation. So that's where sometimes things diverge, and we work together on all kinds of areas. And they actually supported this bill that they thought that wasn't perfect because they realized that it was incremental. And so, but there is a lot of collaboration, and Pat doesn't have time to do that. And I don't always have time to do that. That, in my opinion, they perform a very valuable service.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, any other comments?
And we're just moving item L to executive session. Is that
We're
correct?
moving items J, K, L, and M to executive session, correct?
We don't have anything to discuss on item M.
Nothing on M, okay? So moving items J, K.
Oh,
and L.
I'm sorry, and nothing on K either, according
Okay.
to Gary. So,
J and L.
and Gary can give an update on that item in open session he just
Which item?
mentioned, item K.
Okay, that's fine. We'll keep it for executive session. So J, K, and L moving to executive session. M is not needed.
But we just said no K.
Okay, yeah.
I thought
He just,
were you gonna give an update?
He can do it.
oh,
Come on.
please talk to us.
I've met with Cromex a couple times since the last meeting. Obviously, my previous update, we're going into closeout. We're gonna be able to get the deal done that we discussed in executive last meeting. The only thing we're waiting on is getting a final date so that we know how many liquidated damages days we have. So everything's moving the way we want it to move. We're just not there yet until we get to final.
Fantastic.
Congratulations.
Good job.
Great work, Gary. And thank you, Mr. Sherman and Mr. Frias, for heading that up. I didn't believe it could be done.
Oh, it can't.
All right, so
Don't expect a Christmas card from them.
understood. So now we're moving only items J and L to executive session, correct?
Yes.
All right. It is now 11:33. Let's adjourn to executive session.
All right, so concerning agenda item J, I make a motion that we approve the request and proposal for the transfer of approximately 12 acres generally located at 4,600 Eckerd Road. Please reference Exhibit 1 from the Green Valley Special Utility District, Sewer CCN, to the City of Schertz, Sewer CCN.
And I'll second.
Mr. Cooper, I'm going to recuse myself from this vote.
Thank you. Mr. Sherman recused himself. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Good job, James.
I preemptive. I was like timing it.
Keeping up there.
All right, moving on to item N,
Aye.
consideration. Oh, we just did that. Sorry, I apologize.
Oh,
Item O, consideration of proposed items to be included on next month's board meeting agenda. Credit card policy.
L. Sorry, did we, L, we got nothing to address on agenda item L. So, going to O,
There was no decision on L.
correct, yeah, a sheet Cody needed to log that.
Oh, gotcha. I apologize.
So on my notes, based on today's meeting, we have the budget amendment review and approval. That'll be next month. We will also
With
have
capital, right?
With capital.
With capital.
with, yeah, that's
Yes.
all encompassing, yes. We are gonna have an agenda items, that goes over the facilities, or this building's roll-up report, to include the expenses, the AIA contracts, the schedule of values, and, the pretty much overall reconciliation brief so that we can talk about things. That'll be for next month. We have the credit card policy and, the list for the fleet management,
Please.
report.
Okay.
Those are the 4 things I'm tracking.
And did we capture the, rate analysis?
That one's already on there, rate analysis on
Rate
there.
Analysis.
And then the policy, I guess, priority list, we will meet with the executive team, go over that. And Pat's gonna send out all the current policies to all the board members so that we can study up on that. That's it.
Facilities policy, is that gonna be at a committee level for now? or-
That we can probably move at the committee level and we'll work on
What?
the facilities usage policy.
Oh.
The
yeah.
committee will
yeah.
work on drafting something
Um,
together on that.
Who's going to take point on that? Would that be you and your committee for facilities, or would that be public services?
No, that'd be,
It'd be our.
All
that'd be
right.
the facilities and then we'll
Okay.
work on that.
Got it? Anybody else? All right, moving on to item P.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, directors. Great meeting today. Thank you, James. Appreciate you being here.
No problem.